So write to me in the chat if you have a huge problem with the audio. And let's see here. 1 second. Okay.
You should present that video so it's in the recording also.
Yeah, but it's not going to come into the chat. It's going to be in the recording. So when I share the screen, it's going to be a part of the recording. Okay. So let's see here. Share screen. This one. Oh wait, I have to choose audio. Okay. So turn up your volume because you're not going to hear it.
That's right, that's better. A little bit of information, or a little bit of misinformation. What? You can have a little bit of misinformation and a hell of a lot of error, but very little information, because most people don't seek information at all. They seek a sense of well-being. They seek reinforcement, verbal. Hey, you're doing well, you look smart. Boy, you know, I like your mentality. Hey, that's a smart suit you got. But very few people seek information. Rarely do you go to a library and a person says, I want information. And the guy says, what kind of information? Anything. Oh, it's information. There are very few people like that. Now, the very few people that I knew like that don't have any friends. Because people are not interested in information. When a person gets up and he says, I'm a no-good drunk, I've lost my home and car, he doesn't want information. He sounds off. And then the other guy just can't wait to get up and tell how he lost his home and car. And now he's sober 3 months, you see. Another guy can't wait to get up and say, I'm sober 11 months, see. Another guy gets up and tells he's sober 15 years. But nobody wants information. They want acceptance at their own levels of development. Our government's not interested in exchanging ideas with other nations. They're interested in securing a deal, the best deal they can get. So are the other nations. And people usually don't even build model airplanes because they're interested in aviation. They build model airplanes because of all the many things that are held up that you can build, airplanes move in 3 dimensions. They move up, down, sideways, and roll. And so you have more dimensional activity there. So people that build model airplanes, usually like other people, they get together and they cut wood and they make something like this with wings on it, and then they put a tail on it, they put a little gas engine on it, and a propeller, and they carry a battery, and they pick it up, and they use control. Rarely do you see a person who's interested in aviation, flying machines. Then they don't do this. You come to the airport and you see a strange looking thing. They say, what the hell is that? They says, watch. And the guy turns up, the thing flies up in the air. It's got no propeller. He says, that's right. I'm interested in flying, but not conventional approaches to anything, because they're worthless. Because if you go out and do the same thing that our old Lillian did, jumped off a precipice with the old bat wings, and people keep talking about creativity, they're not creating anything. You know, I ask a writer, what do you want to do? He says, I want to be like Jacque London. Well, he already existed and wrote. Now what are you going to do? You want to be like Jacque London, then you're doing a duplicate, and that's against the law. And you got people in the court say, well, what is it that you want? They don't know. Because they've never been told what it is that they wanted. They've been told what they ought to want. And so they start living in a lifestyle that's comfortable to their emotions. It goes that way. And their parents say you ought to live that way. And other people say you ought to live that way. And they are in a state of conflict. This is the right way. The way you go is the right way to live for you at that time. And when you make a switch and you start moving that way, that's the right way for you. Unless he comes over and says, which way do you think I ought to go? Then you yak it. But if he's headed that way, and he's got a suitcases in his hand, say, pleasant voyage, see? Now people do that. They head in different directions. But their direction keeps changing. That means they're growing. I always respect a girl who's been married 15 times. She's trying, looking around, searching I don't like a guy that built one airplane, 100 different models, helicopters, low wing, high wing. This is a guy that's looking around. So I take my hat off and respect somebody who's been divorced 25 times because they're searching, they're seeking. But our society says, you've been married twice, there's something wrong with you. And everybody feels shocked. Society makes them sick if they don't conform to their fucking patterns. And their patterns are senseless. Imagine anyone that would take on the job, and this is no insult, of being a medical doctor or a psychiatrist, cutting into assholes and infectious bodies, cutting into that all day long. How can that be interesting? Much more interesting to look into the nature of nature than cutting it. Or a guy drilling holes in rotten teeth all day long, a dentist. What type of mentality would put a guy behind a chair that drill into rotting gums all day long? I don't understand that. But you ask a guy, what are you? And he says, I'm a dentist. And I'm sorry to hear that. Another guy, I'm a lawyer. He says, gee, that's disgusting. It's like owning a chain of whorehouses in the Philippines and not paying anybody. A lawyer is the most dishonest, corrupt person that can exist. But here people walk around proud of that. That's what we say here, since you're new, that this society is utterly insane. And if you're trying to make sense of it, you get sick. The best thing to do is get out your notebook, look out the window, make notes, and put it back in your pocket. Don't make any adjustments to it. See? So when somebody says they don't like your painting, you say, that's fine. But don't argue with them, then you get sick. Okay? Now, it's when you begin to think that you're ill because you don't fit in with anything. You're on the fringe of sanity. And when you begin to fit in, you've lost it. When you fit in with the way things are going, you've lost it. You're out of step. Being alive is subject to stimulus, change, and conforming to a standard pattern is death. Now, if you experiment and seek out newer and different ways of thinking, you're going to get hurt because you're experimenting. This guy builds a little single-man helicopter, and the blade shakes to pieces, and he breaks his arm. Experimentation means unknown areas. That's why most people don't experiment. So if you experiment, you get hurt. That's why most people say, well, now, wait a while. I tried all those things when I was crazy, when I was young. But now I've settled down, I don't try anything anymore. That's safer. So most normal people consider themselves safe.
Okay. Thank you for listening to that. I'm going to hold a short presentation so you know who I am. Okay.
I'm sorry, it said consider themselves sane or safe?
Safe. Normal people consider themselves safe because they stop experimenting. They stop trying new things and they say, oh, I used to do that when I was a kid. When kids go to college, they say, let's make a better world. And all the old professors say, that will never work. So they're safe. Okay. So yeah, no problem. So a few rules for these sessions. If you want to volunteer, if you want to assist us in any way, we can discuss that afterwards. That, you can contact me or just let me know if you want to do something like that. Please don't promote other organizations here because we have short amount of time and we want to discuss the Venus project. And we don't discuss conspiracy theories here. If you know COVID isn't real, don't tell us because that's not, it has nothing to do with our organization. What is my role here? I am not here for debate. I'm not here to force my beliefs or my values or what I have learned. I'm here to assist you to understand this subject. That's my role here. If you feel something is really off, talk to me afterwards. write to me, say, I want to discuss this and that. And we can have, you know, a Zoom meeting, just you and me, and we can discuss things. It's not a problem. And today, we're quite a few, you know, we're a lot of people. So try to keep your questions short as you can. You know, summarize what it is you want to ask. And please do ask, because I enjoy answering those questions. And I also enjoy, it might be difficult for you to imagine, but until the next session, I will be thinking about the questions that you ask here today, because I go over them and I think, you know, could I have said it in a more appropriate way? So it's very entertaining for me. So I want to thank Alex first off for the session today. He added 400 people to his Facebook so he could invite them to this session, because for some reason, people don't get the notification. So thank you, Alex, when you hopefully view this video. I want to briefly tell you how I learned about the Venus Project. And as many of you have mentioned, it was the Zeitgeist movies. I saw them and I enjoyed them. I watched them many, many times over and over again. And in these videos, you see this old man, and he was talking about something, and I had no idea what it was. And I didn't like listening to him. I liked listening to other things in the Zeitgeist movies, because I couldn't understand what he was talking about. But because I listened to the Zeitgeist movies so many times, you know, I got some bits about what he's talking about. So I went into a discussion with somebody and I brought up, and I was trying to explain what Jacque Fresco had said. And this person asked a lot of questions, and I said, I have no idea. So I started doing my homework. I went back and started looking at more videos, and then I couldn't stop because I enjoyed looking at those videos. After doing that for 2 years, I started having meetups. I created events like these, but in Stockholm. And I did that for every month for many years. I got access to, or I bought more material and books, and I continued to learn because I had watched everything on YouTube. And in 2014, I went to Florida and I met Jacque and Roxanne. When I was there, it was a nice experience to seeing everything there, but I was there because I had a goal in mind. I wanted to get access to more material. So after the day, after the tour, I said to Roxanne, you know, give me more please. And she said no. And I said, you know, what can I do? So you give me, you know, more lectures. And she said, if you transcribe them, we can give you access. And I said, sure, you know, send me and I will transcribe them for you. And I did that for 3 years. And while I was doing that, they contacted me and said, do you want to be a point of contact for Sweden? And I said, sure. I went through that course. It was like 8 or 10 weeks. And after doing that for a year, they contacted me. It's called the Social Cyberneering Education Project. That means that when you go through that, you can say, I represent the Venus Project. And I've been doing that for 3 years. It takes a while because, you know, it's not my full-time job. So it takes a while. But I'm not finished yet. And on Mondays and Thursdays, we have a book session and a video session where we discuss the material. And we've been doing that for a while now. If you guys are interested in the book sessions or the video sessions, let me know afterwards. So a disclaimer, because I'm not finished with my you know, education, whatever I say here, it is my opinions. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt. And I know 10 years from now, I will look back at this video and say, oh, I need to, you know, I'm still learning. After 10 years, I'm still learning. I'm still improving my answers. So take it with a grain of salt. Okay, So I'm just going to do a short 2 topics I want to talk about before I open up for questions. And I want to tell you about
your incentive.
Sorry?
Describe your incentives.
Okay, my incentives for this, they are very selfish. Why I do this is very selfish. It's because I enjoy this. I enjoy learning about this topic. Nothing else. I don't imagine saving the world or creating a better world that it has to happen in my lifetime. Even if it doesn't happen, I don't care, because what I have learned, that is significant to me. And I enjoy teaching others what I have learned. But I don't sit here and say, this has to happen. This has to, become reality, and I'm going to make it happen. I'm just here assisting others, and hopefully they will see, what I find so interesting about this topic. So that's what I do. And that's what I, do 99% of the time. It is for myself, learning about this subject. So that's how I describe it for myself. And I think that's what I look for when I meet people, is that they are doing it a little bit for themselves, because those people usually stay. But when they come in here with the attitude of, I'm going to save the world, they usually come and then they go. That's the result I have experienced. So let me tell you a short story about when I met Roxanne in 2014. When I went there, I had 2 books that were important to me. And one is about attachment theory, and one is The Zero Marginal Cost Society by Jeremy Rifkin. And I said to Roxanne, these are like the Venus Project. And she said, no, it is not. They don't deal with values. And, it was a little bit heartbreaking, because you feel like what I'm upholding is important. So when somebody puts it down, it's usually, it takes maybe the air out of you. And it's very easy for me in that moment to say, what is this project? What does she know? But I really didn't do that. I felt that maybe I have something more I need to learn. I was sitting and I was trying to make sense of it. And what I have realized after learning about this is that just because something doesn't make sense doesn't mean that it isn't valid. So a lot of people that come here, they hold their books up. And I try to do what Roxanne did. She was very straightforward with me. I try to put it in a much more gentle way. But what happens often is the more you learn, the puzzles that you have put together, you have to redo them. There's a lot of problems with the books we have read or the movies we've seen and the thoughts we have about what the Venus Project is. You have to redo it. But that will give you a great chance of growing. So I'm still growing, I'm still learning. That's the best part of it. But if I would have said, if she would have said those books are it, then I would have stagnated, 6 years ago and stuck there. So when you come here, you will never learn about the Venus Project just by coming here every 2 weeks. You have to do your homework. You have to go and watch videos to help you make sense of this. I can't do it. The topic is too big. We're not here to do a specific little thing. Then I would say, yes, it's easy, but the topic is too broad for you to just come here and I will explain everything to you and you will say, great, let's do that. That was the introduction. Does anybody have any questions about that part? Just turn on your microphone and ask. Okay, I will continue then. I
could
yes.
just say that you have probably stolen my story. because my startup with the Venus project was very, very similar, including the part of visiting Roxanne.
What did you uphold? Do you remember? Was it a book or something that she corrected you on?
No, I bought a book there, All That Money Cannot Buy. It's written by Jacque Fresco, and I digested it.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see here. Somebody wrote something in the chat. Okay, I'm going to continue and I'm going to look at the chat afterwards. So I want to tell you a story about agriculture. Now, this isn't 100% accurate. It's just a story to try to get another point across. And the point is the picture on the right side, which is society. But I'm going to be talking about agriculture, but comparing it to today's society. So when they started with agriculture many years ago, they were confused. They had many problems. They couldn't solve everything because it was a new area. And sometimes the farmer got pissed off and he said, fuck these plants, and he destroyed everything and he went back to hunting. It doesn't work. These plants are idiots. Later on, the more he learned, he tried to control them. He said, let's not destroy them. It works. But he maybe pulled on them and he talked to them and he said, be good. You know, and he pulled on them, said, grow taller. That didn't always work. So he went to the shaman or the witch doctor and said, you know, show me the way. And he gave him some advice, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Later on, he became more civilized, or he thought he became more civilized. And he said, hey, let's ask everybody what they think. And they stood around and said, let's put this amount of water. And they voted. And they said, yeah, let's try it. And it worked sometimes. Something happened during this time. One of the farmers stood there and he said, hey, there's a lot of shit in this tomato plant around it. That's disgusting. And he was maybe a little bit pissed off about that. But he remembered that. And he noticed later on that the plants grew a little bit better. And he started saying, hey, maybe there is something there. And he started testing it out, putting manure. And he saw the results and he went and told other people and said, these are the results I have found. So what happened in agriculture is that the more they learned, the less they looked at the plant. The more they started to work on the environment around the plant. So if you want it to grow, focus on the environment. And that's the problem we have today, is that we're still looking at the plant and we're saying, you're not good. You're not behaving in a correct way. And you see that in how we're spending our money, our resources. We're still on the agriculture part one, where the farmer gets pissed off and he rips everything up. We're on that stage. And that's what we mean by an insane world. We might look civilized because we have advanced in some areas, but we're still stagnant in many other areas. We would like to see more of this, that you look at people and say, I wonder if we give everybody housing, what will happen? And you take notes. What happens when we give them free access to education, access to food, access to resources? And then you take notes and you see what will happen. Okay, that was just a short story. This is open now for questions. Some of you have watched these materials. Is there any areas where you feel something is unclear or something is clear, but you would like to hear it in a different way and see maybe how would I answer that question? You can write it in the chat or you can turn on your microphone. Don't be shy, guys.
Patchman, it's David. Hi.
Hi, David.
Okay, let me ask this. Yeah, the story is very interesting and it has an important message. But how can we apply this today? Or, you know, as in your own words, how can we apply it in a more appropriate way to try to bring people in, at least so share in a better way the message that they understand it.
Okay. Let me give the example of, I have one example. And this is from one of the books that we have been reading regarding the study of, the proper study of mankind. It's written by Stuart Chase. And in this book, he has a very nice example, which tries to emphasize what this example was. So I'm gonna go through it. When the US went into World War II, they wanted more airplane pilots, but they didn't have a clear criteria what that meant. You know, what kind of personality becomes a good pilot? They had one criteria, which was to be brave. That was it. So, are you brave? Great, get in. So they hired some social engineers to say, can you work on this? Can you improve this so we get better pilots? And they wrote down, you know, let's try this. Person with high education, a person that has lots in the mechanics, has worked with that. So they had different things. And they interviewed people and they wrote down, you know, their background. And then they didn't tell them that they're part of a study. They just looked at their performances. How many of these people passed? And after doing that, they found out that, for example, this kind of personality is more appropriate to becoming a pilot. And that's what they did. So this is what we would like to see being implied in all areas of life. The problem you have today is that if you start doing this, the reason society does it today, it is to gain from it. That's why when you go for an interview, they ask you questions. It is not for you to see, you know, can we help you? It's, can you help us? We don't want you to be stealing shit. You know, do you have a criminal record? So they're asking it to gain for themselves. Or they do a study to see, you know, how can we get men to buy this product? Not to improve their lives, but to improve my life. The first study that will be of relevance, that will make me say, oh, this is important. It is the study of how can we unite the world under one flag and use the resources in an appropriate way. Those are the elements I'm looking for. In this society, I'm not so interested in improvements, because improvements, if you're going into the wrong direction, isn't improvements. If you can get, for example, soldiers to feel better, what does that improve? You know, better soldiers. So we have these problems, but this is the tool if you want to solve these problems. Instead of saying, what do you think? Let's vote on it. You have to do a study on people. Did that help you, David?
Yeah, it's a different approach. Yes, but it is important to understand with the people you're talking to. That is quite and yes, it is important, and especially the need they could have in a certain moment or in the moment that you approach them and talk about this. But yes, I get it.
I wouldn't bring this up if I was talking, because this is a little bit too complicated. I think for some of you people, you might not understand what I'm talking about. So this part is a little bit too deep into the subject. And can you say, Ulrich, the thing you wrote, can you explain that? No, never again shy talking to an audience or addressing people on, let's say, market since 1986? Turn on your microphone.
It's better if he explains.
I have been a very, very shy, as you know, the introvert type of people when I was younger, and only in '86, that was after the Chernobyl accident, I became a very open person, even a bit extroverted. And since that time, I am not shy to talk to a bigger audience, maybe 500 people. That was a breakthrough for me to let the shyness go. You get me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Ulrich. I used to be like that, introverted. I didn't like to talk to people. When Jacque helped me with an example many years ago, and he said that if there's a fire in a cinema and you see that fire, you don't care if there's 1,000 people, because you go in there and you say, you know, fire, get out. Because at that time, you are not seeking approval of others. You're there to inform them. And that's what helped me a lot. I'm here to assist you, you know, to inform you. So I'm not seeking approval. I'm just here to assist you. That helped me a lot to get over, you know, the anxiety of knowing what I'm talking about. But the more you learn about a subject, that makes it a lot easier. Then you're not so confused.
Yeah. I was saying the similar thing in the chat before the last one.
Oh,
yeah, just above the last one.
The best of conversation lecture
is knowing the other person is living. And with my word, I might have put some semen into his head,
yeah,
which he is thinking about or not. And if I have only one who is reconsidering it, it's already a success.
Yeah.
My internet connection is not so good. I just got a notice on the screen.
Oh, it's okay for us. Thank you, Ulrich.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any more thoughts? Anything they, you know, when they listen to the material, for example, Roger, when you listen to that, or Boo, when you listen to that video for the first time, was there anything that you felt wasn't clear or you would like me to elaborate on?
Well, my reflection is that it brings to the surface existential questions about the future, and while confronting this concept, you automatically, how can I explain, you feel this is not done in a year or a couple of years. It's a very futuristic project, and it brings up the how and in what way we are going to continue as mankind. It's a very deep questions, and I feel This is this movement is some kind. It's a group activity. Maybe we can bring up some answers in the future, which I would like to participate in. But that's the approach I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sam, you wrote a question there. I have heard you mention earlier, we're not here to do specific little thing. What are then the takeaways for us, for anybody that would like to learn more about the Venus project now or in the near future? So the main difference with this project in comparison to other projects is that we don't do what is called patchwork. We don't look at, for example, cars and say, oh, they're polluting. That's not of concern for us. We are concerned with why do they pollute? What are the mechanisms that makes the car producer say, I don't care about pollution. That's not my job. I'm here to make money. That's what we're concerned with. Or you take, if I'm talking to a builder and is creating my house and he uses shitty material, our organization is not concerned with that individual. We want to look what forces this person to behave in this manner, and we want to eliminate that. The things that make people move in these directions. And the main cause of this problem to us, it is economics that forces people to behave in the manner you see today. If you change that, you will have a new kind of behavior. So what does that mean? Is that if you would like to see people not steal things, for example, here in Sweden, we have the public library. You go there, you get access to books. There must be a particular circumstance when somebody steals a book. I remember when I went to university, I had a friend there. He used to hide books in the public library because he used to say that if I don't hide it, because this course has just started, now everybody's going to come for this book. But I have taken out, let's say, 3 books. I need those, but I can't take out more. I have to leave one to take one more. So this book, I'm going to go hide somewhere in the library. So that forces his behavior. Is he good or bad? He has to solve it. And this is the way he solves this problem. But if he had hundreds of those books and he knew that nobody's going to come and take them all, he wouldn't care. He would just place it right back there. So a lot of people wonder how this comes about. And it feels like something, it's very difficult to put together if you have not been exposed to these ideas before. So I'm going to go through that and see if it assists you in a way. So long time ago, we had a hand tool culture. So everything was done by hand. Then they started to bring in machines, and men and machines worked together to create products. Later on, they started, this is the stage we're on now. They started to automate a factory. For example, you guys have probably seen Amazon, how it looks now, how they move products around. So they're removing people from the factories. Lego is the same, millions of products, very few people managing them. So what happens is that that's the stage, but there is one more stage that is the complete stage, and that is cyberneering. That's what Jacque Fresco used to call this organization, social cyberneering. And cyberneering is when Lego has control of the materials, all of them that they need to produce. They get them automatically. They produce, they have shipment that goes out without anybody touching them. They're organized all the way through. Imagine Amazon being like that, getting in all of their products, all of the material, producing, creating, but no people involved. What happens with people then? People have two roles in this society: to produce and to consume. Now they are no longer producing because they are no longer needed. They lose their ability to consume because they have no more money. And that's how we see this society changing, by these circumstances. And this is what Jacque used to talk about in the 50s. Can you imagine him talking about automations? You know, it was so difficult for them to understand that. For us now, some of us, it makes a little bit more sense because we see that automation. But maybe some of us still think that, well, how can you automate a doctor's job? How can you, you know, those are thinking people. Today, you have, in Sweden at least, you know, you sit and you have a chat with the doctor instead of going to them and visit them because of COVID. You sit and just chat with them. They will start saving all of those answers, and they will start using answers to reply to whatever this person is writing. And instead of having 10 doctors looking at the answers, you will just have a doctor looking over all of those answers because it's automatically going out and he's just checking, is that okay? And before he gives the prescription, they have had the conversation and he just clicks yes. So then suddenly one doctor is doing 10 doctors' jobs. And they tell the other doctors, thank you for your education, your services are no longer needed, please exit. And it is those people they want to get out because those people cost a lot of money. So when that occurs, then society doesn't work. You will have factories that can produce, and the government goes in and says, why aren't you producing? They say, they are not buying. I'm not here to just create. I need money. They will have to force companies to produce. That's what happened in the US when, because of COVID, you know, people weren't going to the meat plants. So the government says, you have to do it. And they force them to go into work and to produce, even though they say, I don't want to do it. So they push them in. So society will try to control people, and they will use military force, all the means that they can, the police, the military. Sooner or later, they will say, somebody will bring it up and say, it is cheaper to take care of people than doing this. I remember, I think this was in the US with the caravan from Mexico, when 1,000 people go together. And they had brought in the military somehow to block this. The cost of doing that, you could have given housing to all of those people. So the more you have those problems with society not working, then they will say it is cheaper to go in this direction. So when you get a better society, it is not because they care about us. It is because it's cheaper. It is easier. Then you will see the beginning of what we would like to see. Unfortunately, it will be a very rough time because we have been brought up to be safe. For you that watched the video in the beginning, to keep the way we have been doing things, to keep that way. And the people in charge will try to keep it in the way it has been for as long as possible. This part regarding change is very difficult from what we're used to. We have been usually brought up with the feeling that there is a particular person that is going to change society. You know, I'm going to do that. Don't wait, guys. No problem. I'm going to do it. It doesn't work that way. It isn't the way we look at it. We look at it as when the circumstances change, society changes. And that is the constant in our evolution, or if you look at nature, it is constantly changing. My favorite thing is to look at, movies about the future. We're going to a million different planets, but I'm still, my money will represent what I can buy. We're conquering the universe, but I have to still check my wallet. Can I buy coffee today? And that's the absurdness of capitalism, to look at it and say, this is forever. There can't be anything else. And that's the mindset of most people, because they have never seen anything else. I would have given the same answer many years ago, but I have seen something new. And therefore, it's very easy for me to say, yeah, let's get rid of this shit. Whenever you guys are ready, just toss it out. But if you're not ready, just let me know. I'm going to eat my pasta and see if I survive.
Sorry, Pageman,
Yeah.
can I?
Yeah, sure. Of course. Thank
Clarify
you.
something? Yeah, because I really like your explanation, and as I've said, I've been a bit kind of oriented with the POC thing for a while. My question, if I may want to clarify, is since you mentioned that you're basically looking at like the systemic kind of structure of why things or how things are happening, like looking at the causal loop of things. And you mentioned about the economics as one of the main root cause of the problem of our societies. And you mentioned about like basically having to change that. I don't know if I got it correctly, but I think then again, I'd like to ask because I stated my question about what takeaways can we actually get at the moment or now and in the near future, because our an average lifetime I think is basically around 60 years old. And we have learned or heard that Jacque was talking about the social cyberneering since 1972, if I'm right. And what timeline are you like kind of looking at? Like for instance, the United Nations, when they establish new frameworks such as the, I think you've probably heard about Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework for Sustainable Development, they actually set timelines in the foreseeable future, like in 10 years or less. And what could be something more immediate, if you get what I mean?
Yeah.
What something more immediate can we actually benefit from here?
Okay. So first off, Jacque, he talked about it like in the 50s. It was a long time back. He was talking about these ideas. Now, the problem we have here is that you can't do anything because the world is not in that place. The only thing you can do at this time is to learn about the subject and be prepared for when people say, what was that? What was the Venus Project? And then you can inform them. When Jacque, he had his lectures for many years. Nobody, people came there, listened, very interesting, very funny, very entertaining. But thank you, I got my life. In 2008, when you had that economic crash, when we all suffered, or we had that up and down, that's when people start looking. That's when the zeitgeist came out, and he couldn't solve the problem. So he started looking and he found something and he said, what about this? And then people were open, like many of us here. But if he had come in a different time with that documentary, we might have said not that interested because it wasn't the right time for us. So that is what you can do. You can be prepared by learning about the subject. As you can see here, when I started many years ago, I had one person that came and listened, and then it grew. Jacque had the same thing. One person, two, three, and now the world knows about it. Will they implement it because they know? They won't. It is when the circumstances becomes so awful, then they will say, hey, socialism didn't work, communism didn't work. What was that? The Venus what? And then you can present it. But if you do it before that, They can't hear you. They hear you, they hear something, but there is no need for it. So you're trying to push a product and they say, I have no use for it. That's the major problem we have. Just because it is sane doesn't mean in an insane world that they will implement it. It's a great idea. It doesn't work that way. All ideas were fought, with the Wright brothers. I saw an article just before they flew. They said, man will never fly in a million years. They had the best scientists in the world, and this was their attitude. They say, I did all the experiments. It will never happen. And just a few days later, they flew. I want to address one more thing that you mentioned. When you listen to Jacque's old lectures, he has a very short span. He says like in 8 years, in 2 years, in 5 years. The reason he says that is because you could have had this many years ago. So is it a marketing tactic? I don't know. For him, it was reality. You could have had it yesterday. You could have it many years ago. So the problem is that society isn't ready for it. He's ready for it. Many of us are ready for it. But society says, no, business is working. No, thank you. Did that help, Sam, with your questions?
Yeah, actually, as you said, I think we need to keep looking for the answers. Thank you.
Yeah. So the major thing, if you want to put some effort into it, learn about the subject. A lot of people come to me and say, how can we get other people involved? And I'm always thinking for myself, how can I get you involved, the person that said that to me? Because usually that person leaves me. They come in with great enthusiasm, but they exit. And they wanted to get other people involved, but I couldn't get that person to stay. So that's why I mentioned earlier that I do this for a very selfish reason. I do it because I'm growing, I'm learning. And if you want to follow along and we can do it together, that's great. That's what I'm looking for. Because that's the reality of today. Even us are not reinforced enough to do anything about it. We do some things, but I got work, I'm eating, I got 2 kids, wife, but it isn't dependent on me or anybody else. Society has to go in this direction. Let me give you one more example with cars. So when cars came out, great idea, functional, more appropriate than horse. But people said, why do I need a car? I got my horse. Because they were stagnant. It is when the young person comes up and says, I have to compete to survive. And he looks at the horse and he says, the car is better. I'm going to make more money of it. That person has to change if he wants to compete with an established way of doing things. So he changes because he has to. So for him, it's easy. And other people make fun of him, say, what is a car? You can have a horse. And he says, yeah, you keep that horse and I'm going to win this game. That's the problem we have. It isn't enough to show something that is better because we have not been brought up to automatically change. For example, if a study would come out and say, it is more appropriate for you to leave your kids in this place, and they show the kids and say, look, they're highly educated, and they come there and say, thank you for putting me here. I have learned 1,000,005 things. It is very difficult for us to just say, oh, I'm going to put my kids in there tomorrow. They say, we guarantee it 100%. Your kids will thank you and kiss your hands every day because you put them here. We will teach them, we will show you videos every day how much they've learned. We can't do that because we haven't been brought up to automatically say, this is more appropriate. I'm going to give up my old ways of thinking. Daryl, do you have a microphone?
Just quickly, Paige, there's a fair bit more other stuff above that as well if you want to have a look in the chat.
Okay.
Hi, yes, I have a microphone. I think it's working.
Okay, Daryl, did you have a question?
Yes, I was just finding out about this World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, this big great reset. And it seems like all these big companies want to do, they say they want to do something and better the world. I don't know if they're actually doing something or they're making a copy of the Venus Project. From what I looked up, Klaus Schwab had started this just a few years before the Venus Project.
Usually, we don't, I think you weren't in the beginning, but we don't talk about other projects when on these sessions. The reason we don't do that is because we have limited amount of time. And a lot of people come here from many different organizations, or they have seen many things. And for example, me, I don't know what that is. And if we would start to talk about it and say, hey, let's compare, then we will lose 1 hour, 1.5 hours towards that. So I try to keep it around the Venus project. So if you can give me something specific, which you think, is this related to the Venus project? That would be, you would assist me greatly.
I'm only just starting to learn about that World Economic Forum, so I don't think I know enough about it to make any direct comparisons.
Yeah, so then we shouldn't. Let's stay out of that area. that comes from a lot of experience from my part.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Let me know if you have any other question. Okay. Michael Cass, this perpetuating status quo is toxic. Did you want to expand on that, or was there anything particular I said?
It was just a small comment.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, but a lot of us do that. It is very easy. Even when I have this project, if I would go somewhere and I would hear somebody talk about something else, I listen intently because to them, that is their reality. And I'm there with an attitude of, now I'm here to learn and see what they find relevant. So I'm always looking to try to find something else. Is this it? Maybe there's a better project. I haven't seen anything. The elements I would be looking for is that, are they giving an alternative system? Do they say, let's redo it in a different way? That's what I'm looking for. And how do they approach that? And the problem, the more you learn about the Venus project, it has an inbuilt way of handling things that don't work. And that is the scientific method. To examine whatever it is that Jacque has done. So later on, we will maybe use his buildings, maybe. And if they are inappropriate, they will be put aside and say, it was relevant for introduction, but not relevant for reality. And you just put it aside. So let me just talk a little bit about how I view him. Because some people think maybe, we worship him. And some people do, but I don't. To me, he's a teacher. And the way you see him as a teacher is because how I view other people that talk about organizations is that if you give out all of your tools without guilt, then I would say you're sane. That you try to help in any way you can to assist a person, but you don't say, come back next week and then I will teach you more. That's why you have people in church. They're confused because they don't understand what it has been written in the Bible. So they constantly have to go back and say, what does this mean? Or was I bad or inappropriate? Even though they have been going to church for 50 years, the way they have been taught hasn't solved their way of thinking so they can manage by themselves. Jacque Fresco tries to give you all of his tools so that you don't have to, when you grow and go beyond him, you say, I'm going to put you aside now. Thank you as a great teacher, but I'm going to build upon it. But I don't need to look back and say, which day did he die? I have no idea. Even though this is the person I have spent most of my time in my life listening to a particular person, but it is the knowledge. He never gave it with guilt. Remember me, old Fresco, build me a statue, you know, I showed you the way, don't forget. It was never about that. And that was the best experience of going there and seeing him. It's a person that has had a different experience of life, and he's trying to assist you in trying to find a more appropriate world. So that's how I view him. And I hope you also take that way of looking at him. Don't uphold him as, you know, the great man. He's a person with a different experience, and we respect and we listen and we learn. And when we feel, we put him aside. Okay, let me know if you have any more questions, guys. Any topic you want to bring up. Hey, Erika, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I just got stuck with my computer as always, and suddenly my kid was asleep, and I just didn't have the time.
Okay, happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us about your experience when you went there to the Venus, Florida, and met Roxanne? Would you like to share that?
I had a really good experience coming there and meeting Nathan and being around all these structures and all the inventions and prototypes of different buildings, machines, small cities built up for show how Fresco was thinking about community and all the functions and everything. So I had a appointment with them, coming there, interviewing them both for 2.5 hours recorded, and it was really, really nice. I would like to go there again, but then of course this Corona breakout was a fact, so I'm not sure what will happen from that, but I'm very curious how all the initiatives are going forward. If you had some ideas of pioneer pilot projects coming from in Sweden or somewhere else, because I've heard people in other organizations, they are finding ways into the communities and municipalities, and they are selling the concepts as a pilot project, and that's a very interesting approach, I think. And I think, as Errol also said or questioned, it is a very attractive thought to just reason about new things. And I have heard the last week, only this week, several of the politicians and many more company owners and leaders asking everyone openly for help. We need visionaries. We need people coming in and paint the future, because we don't know. We are in the system, and there are plenty of research showing people engaged within the system have a hard time recognizing how anything else besides that would work. So that's very interesting from my point of view. Yeah.
Let me expand on that. I remember I was looking at it was like a philosophy program here in Sweden, and there were 4 people, and they were talking about society, and they talked for maybe 45 minutes about problems, and then one of them said, "So what do you want to do?" And for the first time they were quiet. They hadn't. That's the problem, because most people learn to talk. This is the way usually things are presented. They sit down and they talk about history, and then they talk about, you know, the history of man, how we got to this point, and then they mention, you know, current society, and then when there is you know, it's been almost an hour, they're going to talk for 1 hour. The last 2 minutes, they give their solution. And before you got any questions about that, they say, I'm out of here. We would like to spend, you know, 59 minutes talking about the solution, because we have so much we want to share. The problem is then it is so difficult when we live in a world when they say, what about now? What are you going to do now? Today is what you have now. This is the shit you have now. We're planning for the future. An example of this is when they started putting down train tracks in the US, and the farmer comes there and says, what is this? And they say, in 10 years from now, your crops will get over the country, you know, everywhere. And he says, what about now? What are you going to do for me now? This is what we have to do. We have to plan for the future. If you get fixed in solving problems today, then you become aligned with looking for a quick fix. There are no quick fixes. We have to go deep into the system and shove it out and replace it, and then start over. So I had one thing that Daryl brought up, which is something I would like to talk about. And he says that I heard Jacque mention that extensionality would replace the word love, but I never found more information on this topic. Can you expand further or point out to me some resources that to learn more about this? I love to talk about that extensionality. So if you feel like it, after this, Google a love song, whatever, you know, top 10 love songs. And when you don't listen to it, please, but read the text. The text is always about what you do for me, for me. The focus of love today is what can you do for me? Make me feel whole, because all of us have been brought up to feel inadequate. We have deep holes and we're looking around and say, who is going to fix my problems? That is the love of today. And just like a car that is built to break down, that is how we are brought up in this society, to break down, to feel confused. The more confused you are, the more somebody can point out a fix for you. Come and talk to me, I'm a shrink, I'm gonna fix your problems. Buy this deodorant, everybody will love you. So that's the kind of upbringing we have in this world. In a world like a resource-based economy, just like the car, there is no more, how can I create a car that breaks down? The attitude is, how can I create a car that will last forever? And that is how people will be brought up, to feel that they have significance, to understand their relationship to other people, to not feel that there is a big hole in them that they can't fill without the need of somebody else. When you are brought up in this way, when you meet other people, you don't need anything from them. You're there to give to them. You're extensional. You say, what can I do for you? I am whole. You don't need to do anything for me. How can I help you? I see that you like doing the same things as I'm doing. I'm working on this project. Can we work together? I know this, you know that, let's do this together. So love becomes a different thing in a sane world. It becomes helping others, and that's the word he used, extensional. How can I assist you instead of you fixing me? So that's the major difference with extensionality and love. I like to follow up question about that as well. What initiative are in action or going on at the moment? Peter, can you give us an update?
Yeah, so there's always something going on. It just depends on how much. You have to understand, obviously, that most of the work's done by volunteers that work around 9 to 5 jobs and family and everything else. From what I understand, the primary factors at the moment is the transcribing of the lectures, the remaining lectures, because the idea is they want to build upon that with educational courses and stuff like that. But in order to be able to design an education course, you need to have a full length of material, and that's their process at the moment. So their primary factor or aim at the moment is to get those material transcribed and proofread, and then add on from that, pretty much. There's always bits and pieces going on in different areas, but that's the main project at the moment, as what I understand. And obviously, Roxanne and Nate are the only ones that are actually working on it full time. They're the ones that are at Venus at the moment. Everyone else obviously works around their other jobs and commitments. Don't know if that helps or.
Do you have any updates on the blueprint they were working on with the engineers?
Blueprint on CFRF?
Yeah.
CFRM or?
Yeah. No. Okay.
Nothing I could say. I haven't looked into that area myself deeply, but it's not something that I understand they're going to give public at the moment. I don't think there's much there, or it's just not what they want to do at the moment.
Could money be raised to have a full-time employees working on to advance TVP more quickly and efficiently? Yes, of course it could be. The problem is that it isn't. So when it comes to what can we do, I just say, what do we have right now? If anybody has, the problem with suggestions, which I learned very early on doing this, is that I used to meet a group in Sweden, but they were part of the zeitgeist, but I used to meet them. And they had a particular person that had a lot of suggestions. And every time we met, he just started blurring out suggestions. And one person said, that's great, but can you take that one on? He says, that's not my job. My job is just to make up ideas of what we can do. And this is the major problem we have. We have many suggestions, but we don't have people that do the work. That's what we need. So whatever suggestions you have, can you take part of it? Remember, we have millions of suggestions. That's for example, what I did. I didn't say, we should transcribe. I said, hey, can I transcribe? That's what I can do. And I said, can I be part of this and that? And I went for it. That's the major thing we need. Vincent, can you help me summarize your questions?
Sure, unless you want to come back to me in like a minute and I'll have my video on.
Yeah, sure. Let's wait for that now. Daryl, was that okay? Do you understand me regarding?
I think just quickly before Daryl responds, I think that the end result is also what they want to do is to be able to create a larger version of the current center where people can go there and they have the resources, so it can be more than just Roxanne and Nate. I believe the zoning laws in the area they're in don't actually permit many more people to live there, and that's a lot of the problem. So they can't actually take on more people full time in their current location because the laws of that area don't allow more occupants. So I believe from what I've seen is the idea is to have a bigger area, if it's not a full-size city or campus, so to speak, just a larger facility to be able to have more full-time people to dedicate their time 100%. That's the long-term goal or short-term.
Okay, Daryl had one more question. Where would the first research center be built? Are there any countries that TVP is in talk with now? Do you have any information about that, Peter?
No, not really. I don't think they have any objection to where it would be built. From what I've heard over time, it just has to be a reasonably stable country. not subject to political unrest, somewhere that it could go south very quickly, if that makes sense. They do have some sort of criteria that the land or whatnot that they would seek would be reasonably close to a major facility or like an airport. So, it can't be like 10 hours away from any civilization, so to speak. So they do have criteria there. Sorry, Fab?
Like Orlando, where parks and people are moving around, yes.
Yeah, there's many ideas. There was talk about just looking at different legislation in different countries and what's allowed in what areas. That's another area they're working on at the moment, just to have that groundworks in place to know.
Yes, they also have you can offer land, and they will analyze if that land can be used to build that research center. But it should be in a place where people are moving around a lot, like Disney. If you put it in front of Disney, it would be great.
Yeah. But regarding, what will be done, for me, it's always the question of what will we get access to? If a government comes and says, here, it's in the desert, but here is, $2 trillion, we say, that's great, thank you. That's not really the major problem. The major problem is, what will we have to work with? Because if it's 2 trillion, we build an airport and we fly them in for free. So the question is, what will we get access to when we get access to something? And then you build upon that. If you only have wood, you will see great wood structures, because that's what we had to work with. Isn't this supposed to be the future? Well, this is what we had to work with. This is the result based upon what they gave us access to.
Yes, the important thing is education. You have to achieve the more number of people. So decision when you present to Roxanne a project, it should be, or I think she pick up those projects that pull the education forward.
Yeah.
And that is why in the first research center will be audio and video and graphics and engineers, and the first research center will be will not live there very common people, will be specialists in different areas.
Could I just ask Erica what she meant in the chat, or if she could explain that? Sorry.
I don't know.
Which?
Yes, sorry.
No worries. So which one did you have a question for?
Just about the pilot projects.
The pilot projects. Which one, or?
You said other pilot projects going on, helping people to evaluate and come to peace with the new ways of being. I think that's what Peter is asking.
Yeah, so I believe it's there are different initiatives, right? So you have culture and more of those, and also this community-based plant organizing self-sufficient trends going on, and they are really attracting people to the countryside. And those projects, for what I can understand, is really interesting for us to evaluate and follow a little bit, because we will know how they did it, and we will have an opportunity maybe in the future where I was just typing our Swedish government is delegating a lot of power to the local communities right now. So it's something happening definitely, and maybe it will come a time that is attractive for us to move in with such an offer, and then we have lots to learn from the earlier projects.
But they should be global, not local.
Yeah, but if we're talking about pilots, I think it's really hard to make overall transition from one day to another. I think it will have to go in phases. I know this is not like Fresco's wish or a dream or ambition. It's in my logic. It doesn't fit in any other way, so it has to be developed.
I understand that approach because it's very common, but TVP is not getting involved with local, like in agriculture, self-sustained society or community. You know, they are very good, but we are talking about globally.
Well, yes, of course, but to extend the theory and the bank of knowledge that exists, but not within reach for many. So that would be a first, I think, good project to just pioneer, and maybe in collaboration with schools, a community, and see how it develops, because it's another time now, and to come into the market, you have to adopt a little bit to come forward with rest of it. So it's an organically growth phase, I think.
Yeah.
I think on regards to the pilot projects, I believe that's what they're aiming to do eventually with just a larger facility. And they're talking about being like a think tank, so to speak. So like you said, get into collaboration with different universities and professors. But I think that the wall they got up against was that they had limited resources to send to academics to study, to say yes or no, or to look into. And from what I understand, it came down to the point from after looking at all these observations that they need to get the material concreted in, so to speak, or transitioned down on a network or on a database. So then that if they send it to peer reviews or whatnot, they have it there, and that's where they've come to this transcribing part, because a lot of it was recorded, like audio recorded. Jacque didn't, from what I understand, write a lot down. Most of it was spoken. So the idea is to change it from that speaking text into paper, so to speak, and then send it, and then work on either from learning platforms to, sending it to academics, and then working on even, I think for funding they found, or for grants, you need to have some sort of concrete evidence or paperwork or academics there. So it's like a chain. So get the stuff down on paper, approach academics, and then look at grants, and then look at like a bigger facility, and sort of go from one step to the other. But unfortunately, it's just, as I said, we all expect it to happen a lot very quickly, which unfortunately in this world we can't do.
Whatever.
The system isn't ready yet, but you have it already in the idea. But the system, is it in somewhat developed in any way, or?
What system, sorry, were you referring to?
So this chain of the people and the guarantees that the knowledge will stay or develop in the same spirit as, or did I misunderstand?
The Meadows project now is working on taking the old lectures and try to create material from there. It's not, if you asking if we are developing a city, no, it's not, we are not doing that. The important thing is that we don't have to confuse the resource-based economy concept. And that is what these people of Kadasha in Peru did. They create like a self-sustained society and start what they call a resource-based economy. But the thing is not confuse that, because it's like building the shuttle. You have to build have engineers, you have to test, you have to redesign, that is the way the project goes, you know.
Sorry, Sam, could you read out your question if you don't have anything else, Erica, or if you have something else you want to ask?
Did you say
Did you get
Vincent?
your answer? Or do you talk with somebody else now?
Sam, did you want to read your question out about how can we adapt?
Oh, hi. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, because you know, I just got his book from a LinkedIn friend. Sorry, I must have put it somewhere. Basically, saying like we are in a countdown of reaching a threshold of irreversible catastrophe. Some are saying 10 years. And I was kind of like really concerned of the timeline here. And if we've been talking about social cyberneering for almost more than half a century, and then what are we really looking at here? And if we're looking at systems that are meant for the future, maybe 20 years from now, do we have the time? And then, as Erica, I think, mentioned that there are ways to actually probably pioneer the concept, maybe something not really so in full application or like a full system about. There are really tons of really interesting concept about RBE or the resource-based economy. And yet we are not really, are we really like kind of trying to maximize it or, you know, apply it in a way that we can be able to adapt to the fast changing world? And the time is of real essence. Thank you.
Okay.
To me, sorry, Paige, I'd like Paige to hear from Paige as well. To me, it's not up to us with the time. Like, I think what we're referring to here is more of the chain of events that Fresco speaks about. Like, so what I see is us sort of thumping our hands up and down or trying to force this upon a society which isn't ready. Like, say, if you come to me 10 years ago and suggested this idea, I would have said, go away, I don't waste my time. So I think a lot of it's to do with more the chain of events rather than forcing it on. But Paige, it'd be good to hear from you.
If you take COVID as an example, then you will see how this society prepares for problems. It waits, and when it goes over the problem, they wait a little bit longer, and then they say, hey, let's do something. That's the kind of world you're living in. So if, let's say that 10 years is the real deal. Let's say, for example, this society, based on how it works, it will wait maybe 12, 13 years. And when the shit is up here, then they say, hey, let's do something. Because that's how this system works. It isn't up to us. We don't have a button, because I would be pushing it all day. We don't have that. You can't force change on a society that says, I'm not interested. Then you're just talking to a wall. There has to be a need. And if there won't be a need, then the shit will go here. Because if people keep their, this is the way life is, if they hang on to that, we're going to have major problems. And that's what we have.
Page man.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally appreciate and understand that concept. That's why I really like TVP, to be honest. And what I'm really looking at is where are we in the crossroad of all these fast changing realities? Do we have pilot projects? Do we have proof of concepts? Are we ready? Like, I mean, it's probably possible to prepare in 100 years, but in 5 years, what alternative system can we or are we ready to propose in case the current system fails? Thank you.
Okay. What we're proposing is the resource-based economy. There isn't anything else. We're not saying, do this and this in between. Society will do whatever it does. For example, with basic income. If you read news article, it's becoming relevant. They're bringing it up and saying, hey, it costs less to do this. So they will try many different things. And if it works, they will freeze up here and they will stay there. And then when that stops working, they will do the next step. But they will, sorry?
Force movement.
Yes, yeah. So they are moved by the circumstances. What we are proposing is an alternative. But what we are doing is we're stepping 10 steps forward and saying, you will reach this conclusion. And they say, yeah, we might, but they don't change. Society has never jumped like that. It is when the system collapses. In all societies, it has been this evolution. In all technical advancements, they have always, when there was a need, they changed them, their ways. So what you're going against is, it is in a resource-based economy, they would have more appropriate tools to say, we have to change already now. We can't wait until people adjust. They will say, these are our new findings regarding a particular subject. These are our suggestions. And people will be brought up to be able to understand how they reach that conclusion, and they will say that is more appropriate, and they will change their behavior because they have been brought up to that. In today's society, we have been brought up with the opposite, to keep your culture, keep your values, keep the way you look at life, that is the correct way. So this is the major problem we have.
In other words, you have to educate people in a technical area.
Yeah, that's one aspect of them.
And those that we've been around for 10 years knows that this is a very deep, broad area. If you don't have that education, we cannot communicate each other. We cannot agree in global goals. And that is the hard part, because it's a technical area, take many years. Yes, sorry.
Does that help, Sam, or no?
Yeah, I really appreciate this discussion, and I don't really expect to get an answer like in an instant. But yes, thanks for sharing all your ideas.
Thank you for
before we move. Sorry, Paige.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say thank you, Sam, because that is a very good attitude to have. To not presume that because you ask a question that whatever I say should be clear. It doesn't work like that. Just like I mentioned in the beginning, that when I showed Roxanne, let me just turn off your guys. Oh, there. Adrian, I'm going to get to you in a second. I just had some bad microphone from you. Just like I showed Roxanne my books, and she gave me an answer, but at that time I couldn't get it because I have to learn more bits to see the conclusion of it. Adrian, do you have a question?
Sorry, just before we move on, can we ask Vincent if he wanted to say what he wanted to say?
Yes, sorry about that. Vincent,
just before we add on, Sam, an area that reflects from what you're saying is that Fresco did mention that there's no guarantee would come to an RBE, and he says many a times that it is a chance that humanity will not live out. So without being too pessimistic, to me, it's not just about we may get to an RBE, but we could just become extinct as a species. That's a possibility. So, you know, if we said steadfast in your ways long enough, you don't want to change, and then you die out. Sorry, we can move on, Vincent.
Yes, I want to mention that these are not our ideas. When you want to learn engineer, you first go to learn, and then you have a language to communicate with others and procedures, and you build a bridge or whatever. You know, this is exactly the same, but it should be abroad. You know, it should be cultural, global.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Vincent, could you assist me in summarizing what you wanted to say?
Yeah, so I actually wouldn't mind just screen sharing, because I made this visual to try to help communicate what I'm talking about. So how I kind of see creating change, and how I've seen like the speed of different companies and organizations and individuals be successful in like creating impact, is that there's this diagram between like the three most important things to create impact. So like one is that it's regenerative and sustainable. So like, you know, the RBE, it aligns with the carrying capacity of the planet. It's a net value add socially, culturally, environmentally. But that's not enough to be successful. That thing also needs to be profitable, and not in the like, you know, typical sense necessarily, but it either needs to have a business model that allows for like a return on investment, or it needs to generate value in some way that is able to be like shared with other people or exchanged with other people. And the last thing is it needs to have a product market fit, or it needs to be something that people want to use. Like people have to be interested. And I think the one thing that I've observed as like a newcomer into this group is like, I feel like the global aspect is like really incredible, but it's very difficult to like be really passionate about something that's not tied down to a sense of place and tied down to a sense of like your local community. And so like how I also consider this is like, is it a fit to like me? Is it something worth doing or putting my time into because I can see how it affects me or my community? And so like, this is not to scale. I feel like the solutions that fit in the intersection of these three things is actually very small, like much smaller than this. And like most of the current companies and startups, they maybe fit in the profitable and also people want to use them. And there's also some other projects that like I would consider the Venus project to be like very heavy into regenerative and sustainable, but I think it also might need a little more fit to people. Like it needs to be designed better so people want to engage and interact. And there's also a lot of things that sit in this intersection that are just very slow and self-funded or voluntary based. And because they don't have that like ability to generate value in some way, then it slows down the process. And so the reason why I bring this up is because I was involved in building a mutual aid group on Long Island. And it was like a really incredible example of like completely shifting the system into some like new way of provisioning for needs. It definitely like fell short in the aspect where like we were restricted by the financial aspect. Where like we were able to like, you know, send people and connect people to like different resources and to help them get in touch with people or do translation or connect people to food banks. But when it got to the point where like people were asking us for money and for financial assistance, like that's kind of where it like broke down. And so I'm wondering, one, like what could be learned and from what's going on right now in the world with these sort of like mutual aid groups, and apply that towards the Venus project. And also how you guys have thought about getting more into that middle part of the Venn diagram where it's like, what do you guys need help with to get more of the aspect of like generating value in a way that is, you know, sustainable economically, and also in a way that, like you said, the issue of like, we can't even get a few people, like 10 or 20 people to align on what to do and to act about it. How are we going to get thousands? Like, right. That to me is an issue with not having that like product market fit, like, and not saying that this is a product, but like, that's the term that like a startup would use to say like, look, people just don't use it. There's something that needs to be tweaked so that it aligns with where people are at right now. Because how I see it, power is not in the past and power is not in the future. Like the only power we have is in the present moment. And so I'm wondering how to bring more of that to this like incredible movement that I've been, you know, just recently learning about. But yeah.
Thank you for that, Vincent. Can I just ask you, how much material have you looked? Like how many videos have you seen on that?
I watched the new video from Peter Joseph and a few of the films, and I've listened to like most of Fresco's talks on YouTube.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. there is a problem with what we are selling. And what you're selling, the concept is there is no profit. There is no, if you invest here, you're going to get this, you're going to get something back. So that's one of our major problems. There is no, we're saying, we're here to end profit. So when an investor looks at it, if that's what they're looking for, they're not usually, I can't imagine them being interested. So that's our problem. The second problem, which you mentioned a little bit, is that people are seeking for, just like they seek to buy a new car, to get an experience, they're very driven to get that instant gratification. And this project, there is no instant gratification. There isn't any, if you give this, you're going to see me on a boat going to China and stopping people hunting whales. And I'm going to send you a video and you say, I invested in that. Great. Look at those beautiful signs. And they're screaming at those people. So there is no emotional investment. This is like trying to sell an idea which people can't connect emotionally instantly. To me, it is very emotionally gratifying to see this project, but it takes a very long time to reach that point and see how it is so relevant and how I would put my time and effort into this instead of doing something that would give me this instant gratitude of, children sending me notes and saying, thank you for doing this for me. So these are the problems we have. The more you learn, you will see those connections, that it is a very difficult thing to just market. And please remember this as well, that great ideas were never something they sat down and explained to everybody. And 1 million people or 10 billion or the world said, let's do it. We understand. That's not how capitalism came about. The farmer didn't know, exactly what it meant. They just saw that I'm more rewarded in this new system. I have less problems in this. But they weren't educated to understand it. Same with communism. They just changed it around and say, we used to do this communism, now we're doing that. And people were like, yeah. So they weren't highly educated. They didn't know what it is about. And this is one of the things here as well, that we don't need everybody to fully understand it. We need people that try to present it, try to give them an alternative and say, this is a direction that we can go in. But I can't imagine this ever being a project that comes by democracy, that people sit there and say, I'm going to vote for the Venus Project. I really can't imagine that happening, that they say, we fully understand what this project is about. Here's my vote. In today's society, it is 3 words, leadership, values, and, church. And that's how you get elected. So I'm sorry if I'm very negative. I don't want to be that way. The more you learn about this subject, you will see these problems. Yeah, I really wish that it wasn't like this, but I can't imagine. Just as I mentioned to you, people that watch the material, they come and go. And if this would be aired on TV and say, vote for this, if there was a huge need for it, then maybe. So I'm one of the most, I remember one lecture, and Jacque said this, he said, don't worry, this is the least likely project that will be implemented. And it's because it comes with a huge package of looking at the world in a totally different way. So have I missed any questions? Did anybody want to bring something up?
I think Erica's got a couple in the chat there, if you want to explain them, Erica.
Yeah, the ones with the schools.
That kind of proposals have been presented to the Venus project, and if you listen to seminars, you will find them, but they don't adapt with the direction that this project should be taken. Peshman explained one side of that, of those aspects that don't match, but there are several. I don't
Can
know
you
if
say what did you read, Fabrico?
Sorry?
Well, I was not following. When you started, what were you talking about? Is it the Swedish schools? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I was talking about the diagram that this guy presented before.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Adrian, I'm sorry, I have muted you many times. It's because the audio is not so good. Would you like to try again? Turn on your microphone.
Yes, I don't know if you hear me.
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay. It's first time for me when I'm participate to these meetings, and my English is not very good. I'm from Romania. I like the Venus project. I saw the Venus project movies on YouTube, and I like this idea to live in this kind of life without the problems. Sorry, but I'm
no. Please continue. Please continue.
Yeah. I wanna make a question. I like this Venus project, but my question is, how can we start to live in this idea like Venus project? And I know Jacque Fresco said we can reach on this. We can live in this idea, which means Venus project, if we have education or if this system collapsed.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's already past too much time, and we cannot do anything through the education to present to every people the Venus project idea, this idea. So I think the idea to sorry.
No, please continue. It's fine. Please continue.
So through education, we cannot bring the Venus project today, but we can bring the Venus project idea if the system collapses. So Jacque Fresco said, to learn about the Venus project. And I think we have to be the people who can teach the other people how to implement different solutions for the problems which we have today. That's why I think, I don't know if it's right what I'm thinking, but I think the Z day, the day when the system collapse must be, I don't know, helped to come earlier, because I see a lot of older people who cannot reach that day. You know, a lot of people are dying just because of COVID or just because of they are old, and they didn't have the time to enjoy the goodness of this idea, the Venus project. So I think we have to hurry up this collapse in one. I don't know.
Okay. So the thing is with this collapse is that really you don't have to do anything.
Yes, I know.
It is built into the system, and the way I imagine it is that we're sitting around and we're playing Monopoly. And as long as you continue to roll the dice, if you ever played it, sooner or later, one person wins it all. And then the game ends. It can't work. The way the rules are set for capitalism, it is that it is self-destructive. You don't have to do anything. You just wait for it to break itself. And when it breaks, you bring out this new game and say, do you want to play something else? We have an alternative.
Yeah,
and that's what you mentioned with education. That is the best thing you can do now, is to learn about it. So when you have the ability, for example, Erika, many years ago, she invited me to talk to a group. And those are the things that will occur. They will say, hey, there was this project I've heard about. Would you like to come and talk about this? We have had TED Talks here in Sweden. I have been invited to a TED Talk in Malmö 6 months from now. These are the things that will occur because it isn't working. But more and more of these things will happen. And then we need more people that not just understand a little bit, but have spent a lot of time discussing, learning, having these kinds of meetings, and are used to the subject. And that takes a long time. Just like everything else, you have to become educated in this subject. It is a very broad subject that needs to be discussed to fully grasp. It took me many years of dedication because it was outside my normal field of this way of thinking. I was not used to it. So that is what is needed. Education, Adrian, as you mentioned. Thank you for that.
And
Yes.
both are needed, education and collapse.
Yeah. They go hand in hand. The more problems you have, the more people seek other things. If you're in a field, I make sandals from Egypt. If there's no market for it in today's society, you have learned something, but there is no need for it. Maybe somebody buys it. But if for some reason it becomes very popular, then you're going to have a great market for yourselves. That's what we're waiting for.
But also that will be it's not going to be a dance, like ballet going through that. It's going to be really a heavy period of time where we might meet on the other side. So it's in my imagination or feeling, I feel I have to do something now because I need to prepare myself for whatever that will be. But I have to do something for being constructive and feel that I have somewhere to go. And I would love to see this start and develop, and not when it's already crisis and we are half the population.
Yeah.
And the best we can do is learn and learn to communicate this approach, this proposal. So you have to learn communication and a skill and try to spread this information as much as you can. That is what we have today. That is what best choice of today.
Can I just say, from my personal experience, I was much the same, Erika, when I first did the POC or Regional Coordinators course, and a couple of the other people from there, volunteers, were the same, and they lost their enthusiasm as they realised that it wasn't an overnight solution. It's a long-term project, you could say. For me, I just, through different learning, understood that, we may not have this come about in our lifetime, but to me, still, the benefits I get from talking to Pageman and the other guys and girls and learning different techniques from, behavioral techniques to mindset changes benefits me regardless of whether an RBE is created. So yeah, I suppose it's to do more with our expectations, and even some of the guys that dropped out of the POC course that I'm still in contact with, you know, they still have similar expectation, having something here and now, and I can understand that because obviously we see a lot of aberrant things happening in the world. But then I also think about like my grandparents when I used to speak to them, and they were saying that the world is going to shit back in, you know, the 1920s or the 1930s. We're still here, not saying that we shouldn't change, but you know, it's sort of, to me, it's relative to that area. It seems to be always, this world's going to shit. What do? We need to do something now. I agree that the world has come a long way in death rates, like increasing or reducing the amount of death rates and whatnot, and increasing in a lot of areas. But obviously that's under a capitalistic environment. You know, I can imagine if we're into an environment where we didn't have to rely on money, there'd be a lot faster progress, but still small steps at a time. You know, we can't control the time, I suppose. What I'm getting at is we're as much, not in the back seat, but as much as a spectator as most, but we try and educate ourselves in areas. So like when Pageman says, if it comes to the point where the shit hits the fan, so to speak, where we have some information and knowledge there, and whether the world decides to go in this direction or not, it to me, it's not out of our control, but it's there. So.
What would happen if somebody from Sweden's most richest investment family came to me and talked to me about this project? What would I say? Well, what should I say?
Say talk to Roxanne fast.
Yeah. I would say talk to Pageman, and Pageman would know to talk to Roxanne or someone that's familiar in that area. To me, Pageman has a lot of tools and experience. But as I said, I think Jacque has said and Roxanne said they don't care where the funding comes from. But if someone wants to fund this direction, it's not we're going to fund it and we want ROI, return on investment, or we want to have input. It's if you fund it, that's fine, but the direction is going to be what we propose, and it's going to be using the scientific method. So, you know, a lot of people these days, and even myself, because I'm in business, if I fund something, my conditioning is that I want input into it. It's like a default, but in this area, it's not that way. Sorry, does that help? Or
yeah, I guess so.
Erika, do you have some friends I should know about?
I am working on it. I actually had a meeting with one of the project leaders, working with this family and a bank and with the algorithm, which they already discovered, and they are also just sitting waiting for the right moment, and then they will reveal it and gather as much, what do you say, för they will get ahead in advance until
maybe that's
there is a demand.
A conversation that you'd want to have with Pageman. You know, more specifically, you guys are both in Sweden, or is that?
Okay.
No.
So it's a new financial system being developed right now, and yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, let me know how it goes. So that's what we would do, and you know, like every project, we need funding. You know, it doesn't happen magically. It's like being in the woods and saying, I have great ideas, but I have no tools, I have no telephone, I can't communicate, I can't do anything without those things. So that's what we would do. And if a person would say, you know, here's funding, what are you going to do with it? Great, we're going to describe exactly what we're going to do with them. And they say, change this. We say, okay, if it's appropriate, say, okay, no problem. You know, use this method. Okay, no problem. You know, it isn't that fixed. You know, depends on the situation. We have to look into it when it's relevant. So what more can we talk about? It's been a long talk now. Does anybody have a last question or something they want to ask? I missed a few in the text. Does anybody want to bring up something they wrote? Oh, I just want to promote something, is that on Mondays and Thursdays, on Mondays, we have a book session. And we go through books, and whenever you read one of these books, and then you go and listen to the videos, it becomes something totally different. You learn so much by reading the right books about this subject. And then we also look at the videos together, and I assist you and I learn as well to understand what the topic is about. If you're interested in those, you can let me know, add me on Facebook and let me know. And you just have to do the work. It's not a place to just come and listen. You have to do the work, and then you can join us on those sessions. So if anybody's interested in that, please let me know.
This is another one there from Daryl.
Okay.
How do we educate people on global overpopulation? I heard Jacque mention this in a video briefly. I think it's the education. Just that.
Yeah. So whenever you bring that topic up, immediately people start to project into it, because they have been brought up in a world when somebody decides something based on how they feel or what they think is appropriate. It is very different in a resource-based economy. The way we look at it is very different from what a normal person would look at it. So the way it would be done is not to start global. First off, we don't have global overpopulation. We're not even close. It has to do with how is the resources used. That's the problem. Today's resources are designed to break down, to not work, to design shitty houses that break down. So these are your problems, not overpopulation. So you need to fix many different things. And when you have fixed those and you have a society that works as best as it can, then you look at the resources that you have available. And now you can say, do we have too many people? If you reach that conclusion, you don't start forcing people, give up your kids like they do in China. Just suddenly say, 1 kid or 2 kids. You present the information, and people have been brought up to understand the information, like working on a boat. And they say, this boat can only handle this amount of weight. And the people on a boat usually understand what that means, that it doesn't work if you put too many people on it. And then they try to find solutions. But solutions aren't like today, like yes or no. It's like, what are the alternatives? Do these alternatives work? Can we change them? So there's a lot of things in it. There is no simple answers. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in those areas. We are not short on quality arable soil for growing food. I understand they're cutting down Brazilian rainforests for farmland. No, we're not short on that as well. Today, a lot of apples and fruit, they just go on to waste because it doesn't look like how an apple should look like for marketing. So a lot of shit just get wasted. And the major problem you have with products is that if I own all the milk in the world, I'm not interested in giving you milk. I'm interested in making money. So if they come to me and say, Pejman, if you reduce the amount of milk and sell less, you will make more money. I have a great incentive to just throw it out. And that's what they did with the corona when the cattle, all the animals, because people weren't buying, they couldn't get them around. They just killed all the animals because it wasn't financially feasible to keep them alive. It was cheaper to just kill them and throw them away and burn them up. So you have a million problems, but you have a million solutions. It's no problem at all when we start going into a saner direction. You're going to have an incredible access to resources. it's going to be beyond anything you can imagine. The example I give, just to give you a picture of it, is Steve Jobs. When he created an iPhone, he didn't create the best that he could. He created what would make him a lot of money. So even though he had billions of dollars, he still had a shitty product because he decided to make money, not to create the best that he could. So even with all of those money, all of that money, they still get bad products because those products are part of this kind of system. What would the Earth limits be on maximum population it could sustain? The problem with that question is that you have to put it in the frame of what kind of technology you're using. There is a picture of Bill Gates. He's standing on a lot of paper, and he was marketing the CD. And he was saying, like, all that information used to be on paper, but it's on this CD. So the point of this example is that the more technology advances, the smaller the impact on the environment is. So for us to know the maximum, we have to know exactly what is the technology being used and how much resources do we have access to. Then you can work out to solve that problem. Okay, so I think I'm going to finish for today. It's been like 3 hours for me, and enough is enough. Let's keep some enthusiasm for the next time.
I want to add that Jacque used to put a lot of stress when he talked about topsoil. We are losing a lot of topsoil that apparently take many years to rebuild.
Yeah, but now you have vertical farming, and they say in today's society, say that's the future. Instead of using topsoil, you can have plants without soil. You just use water and stone, and I don't know exactly, but there are millions of.
It's a lot more efficient. Yeah, vertical farming is a lot more efficient. You control the environment. You put it in big warehouses. You feed in the nutrients that needs to be fed into it. And then I think Fresco even talked about manufacturing meat, which is a lot more efficient again. So even if you remove those two major agricultural, over time issues in the world, you're going to free up a lot of land and you can restore a lot of area.
Okay,
there is an interview that is made by Nicola, and he answered those questions: how we measure the current capacity and the soil problem.
Yes, let's finish it for today. And if you can, until next time, try to watch some videos. It will assist you. And if you find an area which you feel is not clear, please write it down, because I'm very interested in getting those questions. Okay, guys, thank you all for coming and staying for such a long time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I see you in 2 weeks. I'm going to post a new event soon. Okay, thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next week
Thank you.
next meeting is in 2 weeks. Pontus.
Oh, thank you so much.
No problem. See you then.
Yep.
Bye.